Hi folks, it's Andy and welcome to today's Kendo rant. Hope you're having a great day. As always, great response to these videos. Super grateful for that. Let's jump into it. Basically, got a few questions I'd like to hammer through today. Some sort of simple ones which I'd like to kind of get smashed through quickly, and then a couple of more in-depth ones that I'll try and cover in sort of detail, whilst also trying to be concise. So first of all, a couple of comments from the last videos. I want to know why Kotogata is more expensive than Dobari. This is in reference to Shinai. Basically, Kotogata is a shinai that's shaped sort of a similar thickness along the whole blade, so the weight is evenly distributed, whereas Dobari is fatter near the hand, so the tip tends to be lighter. These are much more popular. Kotogata is not as popular as Dobari, so it's not produced in sort of as you know, it's not produced on the same mass scale, so the costs are higher, and that's why they're more expensive in general. So that's that. Another one was, how do I know that cheap Borg sets use carpet underlay? Have I cut one open, or have I or one of my friends used one to destruction? No, I haven't used one to destruction. I haven't cut one open. I know because I've basically been to where they make them. I've been to pretty much all of the production facilities now, all over Asia. And inspected them. I know what goes into them. I've spoken to the people that make the burger, not just for our company, but for the other companies out there, and especially some of the bigger ones that I was referencing, that have these really cheap sets. Now they've offered the same thing for us if we want that sort of really cheap and nasty sort of price point. They can make it in the same way, but I've obviously refused that because that isn't what we're about. That isn't how our business works. But that's how I know that they use carpet underlay and that sort of recycled rubbish to get the prices down like that, because I've been there and I've seen it with my own eyes. Okay. Next one was a bit more of a I wanted to also respond, actually, just before I get into the next question, to some of the comments on the last video about making Kendo more popular. A few people have mentioned how Kendo doesn't need to get more popular, or they don't want Kendo to be more popular, which is fine, fair enough. I kind of understand that, especially you don't want sort of riff-raff or whatever coming in that's kind of your Kendo hooligans or anything like that. Fair enough, I sort of get that, but my sort of position is, I started Kendo in a very small local club that's now had to shut down, unfortunately, because there wasn't enough people going. If you live in a big city or a capital city where there's lots of people, lots of Kendo clubs, I think it's easy to kind of take it for granted that there's always going to be a club there. But if you live sort of a little bit further out, or in a quieter place, then you really do need people to know about Kendo so that they come and start, so that you can actually have a club in the first place, because you've got to pay for the sort of the renting of the dojo. You've got to, you need people to practice with in order to practice. And the other thing is myself. Kendo has touched my life in so many ways. It's been such a positive thing for me. I just want as many people as possible to sort of gain from it like I have. So I'm very much in the camp of let's try and get as many people into Kendo as possible, because I think it's a wonderful thing, and the more people in it, the better. Okay, so the next question I want to sort of chat about is, it was posted on a video I shared on my personal Facebook, about I shared a video from the Korean ESPN highlights from the World Championships, the 13th World Championships, when it was in Taiwan. Many years ago now, when Korea were able to achieve first place in the teams. Basically, the question says, this is a historic WKC where Korea won. I remember the whole atmosphere was against Japan in the arena. Perhaps another rant topic. Was it really men in the Japan-USA Taisho match, or the crowd made it so? I know you already discussed the Shimpan, but more broadly, how does the atmosphere and the shouting from the edge of the shiaijo influence the Kendoka? Well, okay, it's a great question. It is a great question. I'll jump to the first part of it straight away. Was the Was it really men in the Japan USA title match? Yeah, that was really men. That was men. You know, it was awarded as men. It was recognised as men. If you watch it in full speed, I remember being there in person. It looked like men. Nobody thought it wasn't men at the time, except maybe the Japanese news organisations. It was men. It looked like it. Now, obviously, you could put it in slow motion, replay it and stuff like that. But we don't do that in Kendo. We don't have slow motion replays. We don't have that facility. And that's because we use the trust in the Shimpan and the human element of refereeing. So I do think it was men in that respect. Also, I mean, I'll be honest, I might be a little bit biased because the US team, they hold a sort of special place in my heart, and they always will since I went over there. I went over to the States a few years ago now. And I spent some time with the US team, and they were so wonderful, so hospitable, and they were really great. Really looked after me. They allowed me to train with them. It was some of the hardest training I've ever done in my life, but it was a really great experience, and I really enjoyed making friends with them all. But you know, even with that being said, the fact of the matter is. Look, whether the men was the best perfect men or not, it's not like Japan have never had sort of erroneous decisions go in their favour in the past. It happens all the time for the Japanese team. And it's not just in the World Championships either. It happens a lot in Japan. If you've got a sort of, you know, people from specific teams or people that have got a particular reputation, they tend to find that they find it a little bit easier than some other competitors to have their points awarded. So that's one thing I would say. Secondly, is that frankly, you know, the US team on that day, they achieved something that will go down in history. It really will. It changed the face of Kendo in a lot of ways, and you know, in a good way. And they deserved it. You know, the passion, the dedication, the teamwork that went into that. I really believe that they deserved that victory, and it was a victory well deserved and well executed. So that's my sort of position on that. Further about shouting from the edge of the Shiaijo, the atmosphere, whether it influences things. Well, probably not as much as you'd imagine. I remember being there, and yeah, there was an atmosphere in the air. There was an atmosphere. The majority of the arena were supporting the US team because you know they thought, you know, nobody expected that to happen. But I've never refereed in the World Kendo Championships, of course. But I've participated in it, and I've also refereed some very large tournaments in Japan. And in Japan, especially the junior tournaments, kids tournaments that I was involved in refereeing, well, there's an awful lot of shouting that goes on there. You know, you can be stood there refereeing, and you'll have parents from the side of the Shiaijo screaming at you, why was that not men? Or no way that was men. And you know, these guys have never even done Kendo before, but you know, they think they know better than you, and they're screaming, and they're really angry, and they're really passionate. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, you're concentrating on the Shiai. You have to just block that out, and I'm pretty sure that's what the guys at the Worlds were doing as well. But in any case, whether they were influenced by it or not, whether the men really hit spot on the target or not, frankly, it was men, and it was well deserved. And I'm really happy for the team that achieved that on that day. I think it was a fantastic achievement, and lots of things have been changed for the better, probably including, arguably, certainly it probably be a point of contention in Japan, but I think it probably did a lot for the Japanese team as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that so far. Okay, next one is basically somebody contacted me about how to deal with multiple teachers at a seminar. Now, it's a difficult thing. I've just come back from the British Kendo Association summer seminar, where we had 3 Hanshi. And this particular person was talking about when they had a seminar where there was many more teachers than that. It's very difficult because what happens is, especially these elite level 8th Dan or Hanshi or whatever, just because they're all the same grade doesn't mean they all have the same ideas, the same methods, or the same Kendo. They all have lots of different things, lots of different ideas about things, and lots of different teachings. So what this person was quite frustrated by was he'd go to a seminar like that, and then he'd get one piece of advice from one sensei and another from another, and another sensei, they'd be like, actually, no, you're doing really well. And it all seemed to contradict. And they found it difficult to figure out how they can deal with that. Well, whose advice should they take or whatever, or, it can be very disheartening in a way, because you feel like, well, I feel like I'm on the right track, and they've got this guy telling me I'm on the right track, but then this guy tells me that I'm total rubbish. And that happens, and it happens in Japan too. I mean, it totally happens in Japan too. And Kendo all over Japan is totally different. You've got down south in Kyushu, where I was, the Kendo there is totally different, probably in lots of ways, to how the Kendo is done in Hokkaido or Kanto or Kansai or something like that. So, this sort of thing happens in Japan too. I think the only thing you can do to deal with it, though, is you've got to. It depends on what stage you're at. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to deal with it. If you're a beginner, you're just starting out. If maybe you're like I'm just trying to read the question properly. There we go. If you're a kind of beginner and you're just starting out, you need to really follow all the advice you can take. And if you get something that's directly contradictory, then you need to speak to your own teacher, the person that teaches you most, and get their advice on it as well. Once you start to get more experience, then what's going to happen is you'll get more and more sort of confident with your own Kendo. So confidence is probably the wrong word. Confidence shouldn't be conflated with ego, because your ego will get in your way. Because what you've got to be careful of is thinking, oh, well, that guy's talking rubbish because it doesn't fit my own, the answer I want to hear, or it doesn't reinforce the sort of advice that I want to have, which is very easy to do. But once you get to a certain level, you get lots of different advice from lots of different places, and you've got to kind of filter it. You've got to use your own initiative, use your own intelligence to kind of filter it and think, okay, well, that works for me. I really like that guy's Kendo, and I really like to emulate that guy's Kendo. So if he's saying that, well, I like to sort of follow down that path. And then if you have someone else that's like, well, that doesn't really fit for me where I am right now. I'll just put it to one side. And maybe you'll come back to it. Maybe in 10 years or something, you'll look back and think, oh, actually, that sensei that said that, at the time I didn't realise, but now, yeah, that really makes sense. That happens. You even have times where you think, okay, well, he said this and this other guy said this. They're totally contradictory. But actually, upon further study, as you get more and more experience, you kind of look back on them and you think, oh, actually, they're not so different after all. Maybe they were actually saying the same thing. Like I say, the thing is you've got all these different ideas on Kendo. I mean, Kendo means the sword road, right? Okay, so it's the Ken no Michi. Yeah, so the way of the sword, as we know. So we've got the way, the road. And I wouldn't like to say that all these different teachings are different roads to the same goal, because in some ways the goal's less important than the road itself. And I think we're all on the same road. I think we're just all, I think everybody just takes a slightly different method of transport, let's say a different vehicle down there. So, you've got all these different teachers that have different ideas, or they're traveling in their own different vehicles, shall we say. So that's my sort of thoughts on that. I mean, you've got a kind of, there's a very well-known phrase, the kind of words, Shu Hari, which means like protect. Shu means protect, means so in that case, it's the first stage. That means you have to just learn everything, learn the basics, the techniques. You do your best to kind of master the basics. Ha means to break away or detach. and it means like this is where you're starting to kind of get your own sort of ideas, whilst at the same time I think you have to kind of throw away I think it's also more esoterical, a bit deeper in it, is where you're kind of detaching yourself from things like you know, the things like your ego, like I said, like confusing thoughts, stuff like that. And then D means to leave or to completely separate. And in this way, it's where you're kind of this is where you're starting to build your own vehicle to travel down that path that's going to take you down the road. That's where we're going to, you know, where it's you realize there that it's not about, okay, the shinai has to be at this specific angle in order for it to be considered ippon. Actually, no, it's more about seme, it's more about semeai, more about riai, more about you know, that sort of thing that's a lot more it's a lot deeper, shall we say, and everyone's got a sort of different interpretation. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the way you've got to kind of approach that situation. You've got to try not to be deterred by it too much, but just do your best to you know, deal with all the different advice. If you're not unsure, then you have to, you know, talk to the people that are teaching you, and also, like I say, you've got to use your brain and try and filter it in the best way that you possibly can. Okay, so that'll do for today. I've been going on for quite a while. I'm not quite sure. I can't quite see how long I've been going on for now. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was not too rambly. It was a bit rambly thinking back on it, but anyway, I hope I addressed the points. Leave me a comment. Let me know down below what you'd like me to rant about next time. I'm going to be filming new episodes of the Kendo Show this weekend. So if you've got any ideas of what you'd like to see in an instructional video or things you'd like for me to cover in that, let me know in the comments, okay? I'll try and do another rant video over the weekend. I'm not sure if I will or not. I've got sort of the kids are off school still and everything, and I'll be sort of spending the weekend with the kids as much as I can this weekend. But if I get a spare sort of 10-15 minutes, I'll do my best to you know, throw the iPhone up and capture another rant video. Don't forget to shop at KendoStar. That's super important, because that's what keeps the wheels turning and pays for us to do all this. That's not the only reason though. It's all fantastic gear. There's nothing that's got a carpet underlay inside, and you can trust the equipment. The prices are decent, and you get fantastic service, because I'm in charge of all the service stuff as well, so you know that you're dealing with someone you can trust. So that's pretty much it. Like I say, leave me a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.